My name is Sherry Guess, and this is the Heavily Meddled Podcast. On this podcast, I interview patients, medical professionals, and industry insiders, having important discussions regarding the all too commonly experienced but lesser identified symptoms of hypersensitivity to metals contained in implanted medical and dental hardware, diet, and environments. These metals often cause a variety of dysfunctional immune responses, chronic pain, and other syndromes that fly under the radar of most patients and physicians. During these interviews, the patients and I discuss ideas for managing symptoms, share personal lifestyle modifications, and talk about how to advocate with and educate providers pre- and post-surgery, along with options found for implant removal and the how-to of adverse event reporting. This podcast does not give medical advice. From time to time, I may interview medical professionals that render personal opinions you can use to follow up with your individual provider. Let's roll. Hello, metalheads, and welcome back to this next episode of the Heavily Meddled Podcast. Today, I'm going to be joined by my Facebook friend, Lacey, from deep in the state of Utah. And I met Lacey on a Facebook group for surgical clip problems. And I met her just before I had gone to have my gallbladder clips removed down in Austin, Texas with Dr. Lainez. And she kind of talked me through what that looked like for her. And I had searched her up in the Facebook group. She had a wonderful, really inspiring story and really does a lot to give back to the metal allergic community. So thanks for joining us today, Lacey. And I can't wait for everybody to hear your story.
Oh, thank you so much, Sherry. I really appreciate that. I'm so glad that we have crossed paths too. And I am so grateful that you're doing this because it is really going to be able to get all of our stories out there and it's going to help people. And I feel like doing it one at a time is challenging. It takes a lot of time and energy for sure. So doing something like this, I think is really going to reach more people. And so I just want to say thank you for doing this, first of all, because I really appreciate that.
Has to be done, doesn't it?
Right.
When you know, you know.
Yeah. So just a little bit about me before I get into my story. My name is Lacey Johnson, and I live in St. George, Utah. I've pretty much lived in Utah my whole life. I've got 2 kids. My daughter just turned 23, and my son just turned 18. So I'm kind of to the point of getting to live life now without having to deal with the kiddos. But now I'm going to be a grandma soon, too. So I'm excited about that. So yeah, so I feel like I just had a normal, upbringing, just, big family, always having fun, fighting with the siblings, just how we all have normal life, and really, I didn't have a whole lot of health issues through my life, just little ones like, when I turned 20, I was pregnant with my daughter and I started having a little bit of heart palpitations, but it wasn't anything major. I just got on a little medicine for that. A little bit of low blood pressure, low blood sugar, but I was always told by doctors it was because I was low weight. And they always told me to gain weight and that I would do better with that. And so those were really only the health issues I had through my life up until 2018. And then things really shifted for me. So
tell me a little bit more about like what you like to do in real life. Like what are your hobbies and interests and what do you do for work and what's your education? Give us a little more background there.
yeah, my hobbies actually have changed since the last couple of years for sure. It was really all about I was a single mom. And so it was really about just working, paying the bills, taking care of the kids, trying to keep up. Right. And that really took over most of my life. I didn't have a lot of hobbies. I've always been kind of in the career of admin, bookkeeping, invoicing, just sitting at a desk all day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type thing, but it really, my focus was on my kids. And so when I look at now what's changed in the last couple of years, it's great because I now, with my health being better after what I've been through, after I share my story, you'll understand it. It's a little bit emotional to think about that. I wish I had my health back when I was younger, when I had my kids. But everything happens for a purpose, and I'm moving forward with it. But it really was just living for my kids in the moment at that time. But yeah, besides that, I really hadn't had any hobbies. But now that I'm doing better and I've got my health, I love hiking. I love community. I love we do all sorts of things like doing vision boards and creating like medicine bags and doing breath classes and meditation, things that really I'd never done until about 3 years ago. So
I'm always seeing these great pictures of you out in the mountains, out in southern Utah on the Red Rocks, and I'm so jealous. It would be so nice. Texas is a little bit flat, and we do have places, but it would be so nice to get out there and do what you're doing. I get to do it in
you'll
the
have to
summer.
come out sometime. It's great.
We'll do it. Okay, so the thing I love about your story, and I can't wait to get into this, is like you mentioned, you didn't have a lot of pre-existing health issues, and the only metal you have in your body were just these few little clips that you're going to tell us about. So tell us how it all started with, I guess, going back to the gallbladder surgery.
Yeah, so kind of where it started, like I said, like you said, and I've said, is I didn't have a whole lot of health issues going on. And it really just came like that. Like I was just sitting at work one day and all of a sudden I just started not feeling well. And it was something different. I knew it was just something was off. And by the end of the day, my boss was like, you need to go to the ER. And he goes, I think it's your gallbladder. So I went into the ER and they basically said, it probably is your gallbladder. Go see a doctor, and see what they
Mm-hmm.
decide. So I had gone over to just a general surgeon here in our town, and he really said, "Oh, we take out gallbladders all the time, but just kind of you make the decision." Kind of left it up to me. And he said that most insurances like you to do a scope and a colonoscopy before you get your gallbladder out, just to make sure there's nothing going on there. So we scheduled that and we did that. And he said that it was a little bit rough getting around in there doing the colonoscopy, but he said everything was good. They didn't find anything, but I was pretty even sick after he did that. And then a month later, I went in and he just kind of said, do you want to get him out? Like what, like what's your decision? And it was kind of interesting to me because I was like, you should be the one kind of giving me the advice and what I should be doing. I didn't feel like it was just my decision to do it. And my mom was with me at every single appointment because she knew, how doctors were and she'd been through this before with breast implants. So she knew she needed kind of to be my advocate and my backup. He talks through how they take them out thousands a day pretty much over the US. I mean, gallbladder is I think the most removed organ every day. Like it's just
And
so
nobody
crazy.
needs their organs. I mean, come on.
Right.
Who
Right.
needs an organ?
I know, right? But I look back at it now and I wish I would have researched more of ways I maybe could have gotten my gallbladder healthy and maybe I wouldn't have needed it out because it wasn't like an emergency thing. But when it came down to it, I'd been sick for 2 months and I kind of just got to the point where I was like, I'm done being sick. Like, okay, let's take it out. Because that was the only option he was kind of giving me. It's kind of like, well, you either deal with it or you get it out type thing. And my mom said not one time did clips get brought up. Not one time did they talk about anything being left back in there or how they clip off the bile duct, any of that stuff. So at this point, we knew nothing about the clips. And looking back now, my mom would have said something about it. And I'll tell you why as we move forward. So I end up scheduling and I get my gallbladder out. And again, he coming in after the gallbladder surgery, talking to my mom, tells us everything. And not one time was clips mentioned in that at all. And so, afterwards he says, it takes 3 to 6 weeks to really feel better and get through kind of the surgery, and so I took it easy and took off work and
it's not a hard surgery, particularly.
No, it's just kind of getting through the stomach stuff, and like just being able to get, because they kind of do go through a little bit of muscle and stuff when they do the laparoscopic. And so, yeah, it wasn't too bad for sure. But my thought was that after 6 months, like I would start feeling better, and I didn't. Like I almost felt like I just kept getting more and more symptoms as weeks would go by and, months started going by. And it was just like, what is going on? Because I started having like really bad back pain and a lot of stomach issues. Like I just really couldn't eat without getting nauseous. I, started getting like constipated, stuff like that would get just kind of just weird feelings I'd never had before where I was like, something is wrong. And so I waited till about 7 months after before I finally went back to my regular doctor and was just like, what is going on? Like, hey, can you help me figure this out? You just don't know, right? Like I wasn't educated at that time. I didn't know what to think. And
so you don't feel like yourself.
Right. Right. With that many more symptoms after, I knew something was going on. And so I went to my regular doctor, my family doctor, and all he really could do was just refer me out to 4 or 5 new specialists of what's going on. Because first of all, one thing was going on is I was starting to get these white pigments on the top of my forehead and the side of my face. And so something was going on with my skin. And then I was having the back pain. And then I was having the stomach issues. And so he started sending me to a dermatologist, and then he was sending me to a GI doctor. And then he was sending me all these different people. Oh, and then I started doing physical therapy for my back. And so I started doing all these things, and you just start going down, the rabbit hole because your doctor refers you out. You're like, okay, and well, each specialist wants to kind of do their own thing because they only know what they know, right? And they only know
Right.
how to kind of fix what they know.
And they don't coordinate their care really most of the time.
Right, right. Well, eventually he just said, let's just send you back to the surgeon that did the surgery and let's just see what he thinks. And it was more because of the gut stuff. Cause I'd gone to a GI, and a GI doctor just basically said, you're going to have to be on a gallbladder diet the rest of your life, and you're going to have to take Metamucil. And I'm like, I'm not 70 years old. I don't want to take Metamucil the rest of my life. And I don't want to just have to be on a diet. Right. I knew
Right.
it just wasn't that. You know how you can just feel your intuition of your body.
Right. I was just going to say the energy around it knows it. One of my favorite practitioners says it either feels heavy or it feels light. And that's how she judges it. Is it heavy? Is it light? So really
Exactly.
heavy stuff to have this diagnosis that you can't get out from under forever.
Yeah. So at that point, I had gone to the surgeon, the regular surgeon. And it's funny how sometimes they change. They're so nice in the beginning when you meet them. And then if you come back to them with an issue, they kind of get that little ego going, and they get that little defensiveness, And so I just went in there. My mom was with me again at every appointment. And because there was times I had to go back to her and ask her, did this really happen? Did I create this in my brain, or did this really happen? And she's like, no, this really happened, And so yeah, I know. My mom is seriously Wonder Woman. I love her. But yeah, so I just went to him and just told him, here's all my new symptoms. And by that time, I had 35 new symptoms from when I got my gallbladder out. And I have them all listed on a list. Yes. I have every symptom. And it was anywhere from a burning sensation inside, to the gut issues, to the back pain, to the pain where the clips were at, to nausea, to insomnia. By that time, you stop sleeping, you start getting anxiety more, and headaches and the brain fog. I mean, I could just go on and on. Just there were so many, weight loss, just all these things were happening. And it's hey, you told me 3 to 6 weeks, and I'm 7 months into this. Now what? And he was like, oh, well, it's probably going to take about 2 years until you get feeling better. And I was like, no. You can't backtrack now, And so I just kind of just told him, I says, I just don't know. Did something go wrong during the colonoscopy? Did something go wrong during the gallbladder removal? And of course, just right away, nope, nothing went wrong. Nothing went wrong.
You're stressed.
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting because right at the end of this appointment, I'm glad that I kind of kept pushing, because at the very end of the appointment, he finally said, well, there's this old school study that's called the SITS marker study. Let's go have you do that. And we'll just see if because, I had a lot of abdominal issues going on and pain and all that. And so he says, let's just go ahead and we'll send you off and do that and just see if there's anything. And I think it was kind of one of those, I'm just going to send you off and get you off my plate,
Right.
But I'm glad he did it, because that's when I went. And what they do is you go to the x-ray place. Ours is at the hospital, and they actually have you swallow this little capsule, and it's got these little white rings in it. What you do is you swallow it, and then they take an x-ray of it going down in your esophagus and stuff. And then you wait 3 or 4 or 5 days, or however many days, I think it was 4 days. And then you come back and they take an x-ray of your abdominal area, and then they see if the rings got stuck anywhere, then they'll know maybe there's an issue in that area. But if they all have passed through, or they're all at the very end, then they don't worry about it, right? So I go in there and I'm in my gown, and I'm, getting the x-ray done. And the x-ray tech says some comment about, oh, I thought that the rings were already going past your gallbladder, but those are your gallbladder clips. And I was like, what? Clip? I never heard the word clips. And so I was like, wait, what do you mean clips? And he says, oh, you didn't know that they use titanium clips to clip off your bile duct when you get your gallbladder out, because if they don't, you'll have a bile leak. And I just sat there in amazement, and I was just like, wait, what? I asked him 3 times, and he's like, yeah, get up and come over here. So I get up in my little gown and go around the corner, and I look at the screen, and he points and shows me, and it just looks like little staples, just a little.
And this is the doctor, or this is
this is the x-ray tech, the tech.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Usually
x-ray
they don't show or tell you anything.
I know. Okay. That's why I'm glad he said something, and so.
Right.
So I went over and looked at him, and I just was like, what? And then for me, it was a light bulb. A light bulb went off just in that moment. And I was like, this is what it is. because the reason why I know is, first of all, I've always been sensitive to metals, but not only that, my sister she's sensitive to metals too. And she had gotten a C-section done and they had actually stapled her stomach and she had told them, I'm highly allergic to metals. Please do not use any metals. They didn't listen to her and they stapled her, but then they put like padding over it. And for 3 days, she didn't know that she was getting infected and getting, sick from this metal. And she went into the ER and had almost died from it. So just knowing these metals are in me, like it was just this light bulb, it was just like, holy cow, like no way, there's no way there's metal inside my body when I can't even handle earrings.
Did it
So
show up besides earrings? Did it show up in other places? Did you know what kind of metals you were allergic to at that point?
I just knew, like, I never liked gold. So I was never one to, if you can't handle the silver, then you go to the gold, right? The real gold. Well, I never wore gold. And
Right.
so to me, it was just like, I just really didn't wear jewelry. And my sister, it was like the buttons on her pants really affected her. She'd have to put like nail polish on
Okay.
the back of it and stuff. But like mine wasn't that bad. It wouldn't affect me like that. When I was younger, it didn't. Like it didn't. It was just more the sensitivity of the ears, and stuff. And
Mhm.
so, yeah. So the minute I left there, I went out into the parking lot and I called the surgeon's office and I talked to his assistant and I just said, oh my gosh, I just found out that I have these clips. I didn't even know I had these clips. And I just said, can you ask the doctor? And, I won't put any names out just to be
Right.
nice. Cause I
Yes.
used to say the names everywhere when I was mad about it all, but I'm trying to come to terms with everything. So I says, will you just ask the doctor? Oh my gosh, is there any way I could be allergic to these clips? And she went and asked him and comes back and she says, no, he says that you can't react to them because they're titanium. And I said, okay, but I do have metal sensitivities and my family does. Most of the girls in my family do. Can you go back and ask him if that still would be something that would, if he could look into that?
Right.
And she comes back and she's just like, Lacey, nope, he says you're not supposed to be reacting to titanium clips, that everybody's supposed to be able to have them and the whole spiel. And so I said, okay, will you go back and ask him if he'll help me figure out if I'm reacting to these? Instead of asking if his opinion, will you help me figure it out? The poor girl, she went and asked him and she came back and she was like, Lacey. And I felt so bad. She probably got yelled at. It felt like, that energy and, that sibling coming back going, Mom just
Right.
yelled at me. And she says, Lacey, he says that if you want to talk more about this, you need to come into the office. And right then, it didn't even take a second for me to think about it. And I said, nope. I said, I'm not going to go in there and have him treat me like that I'm crazy. So I will continue to search and
Prescribed
figure it out.
Prozac.
Right. Exactly. Because I could already tell by the way he treated me the time before when I went in, I just could
Yeah.
tell he was kind of that ego and just nothing's wrong. And you know what she told me? She says, Lacey, I think you need to keep looking into this. And I appreciated that so much that she
Just that
wasn't just
one
going to go,
statement.
yep, not just go with what the doctor says. She's going to say, I think you need to keep looking into this. And maybe she had an experience where she had heard something about this or something to where she was like, okay, I know
Right.
this could happen. So keep looking into it. So as soon as I got off the phone with them, I called I had a friend that's in the medical field and she always would refer me to different doctors. And she says, go to this allergy doctor, call this allergy doctor. So I called the allergy doctor and I just told him what was going on. I said, I got to find out if I'm really allergic to metals. And they took me in the next day. So the next morning I went in there and he says, okay, what we're going to do. And I told him my whole story. I gave him the whole story, what was going on and the symptoms and everything. And it's just a regular allergy doctor. And he just says, let's do two things. He goes, let's do a back patch test, which would be external of a metal testing to see if you're allergic that way. And then let's do the blood test. And I was like, okay. So he puts on on the patches on the back. But by this time, I was starting to get really sensitive to a lot of stuff, tapes, adhesives. The couple of times I had already gone into the ER or gone and gotten like fluid or anything like IVs and stuff. The needles would even burn my skin, or even when they put the needles in and then leave the little, I think it's plastic that would burn. So I was getting really sensitive already to stuff.
How long was it past your surgery at this point? How long after your surgery?
This was still around that 7 months when I had talked
Okay.
to the doctor. Yep. Yeah. And still at this point, I started going to physical therapy for my back and had gone to a dermatologist about my skin, which just told me that I'm starting to get is it Vigilite? I can't remember the name of it, where you just start getting the light spots. And they
Yeah, I
basically
don't
told
know what
me
it's
I'm going to start getting it and I'm going to have to live with it. Like they just told me it would never go away. I was going to a GI doctor, which, just told me the diet. So in between, I'm doing all these other doctors, but I finally moved on to, okay, now I need to do allergy. And once I knew I had the clips, it was a whole nother adventure from there. I turned into like a detective. I turned into my own advocate. It was just like, I got to get these out of me. So yeah, so when I went to allergy doctor, he went ahead and did the back patch test. So like I said, you leave that on for 2 days, but more if anything, the tape was burning those 2 days than anything. And so I really was like, probably just show up normal, like all my other tests, that nothing's coming up. It's just going to be the tape that's burning me. And that same day I went and did the blood test, but the blood test takes, I think, like 2 weeks to get back.
Now, which
So
blood test did he have you do? Because a lot of allergists don't even know there's a blood test for metal. So I'm curious.
I know. And I didn't even have to, like, he just did it. I think it's called the LTT. Is that
So
the
did you
ortho
do, so the Melisa and orthopedic analysis both do LTT? I'm not sure.
orthopedic? Yep. It
Okay.
was the orthopedic. Yep. Yeah. And so, yeah, and that's what was great is that I have had people reach out about that and be like, how do you get that test? I'm like, I don't know. I just went to my allergy doctor and he did it. It wasn't a struggle for me. So it's funny that different states and even different countries have an issue getting a blood test done for
And we
metal
have those
testing.
links on our website. So
Yes.
anybody
Yeah.
that sees this episode, you can just point them to your episode. That's where it
Yes.
is. Right.
Absolutely. We'll put all the links in there for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I went 2 days with having the back patch test on. And when I went back, he took it off and he was in surprise himself of actually, I don't know if people know, but they're just little squares and they just put the metal sample right on the squares. So when he takes it off, he can see and he can know exactly what is what. And he pulled it off and the nickel and the gold were like a blister where the squares were at. Nothing else showed up, but those two showed up for blisters. And he even kind of was like, whoa, like, no. And I'm like, what's going on? And so he told me.
No brainer.
Yeah. And so he says, nickel and gold. And he knew my story already. So he did kind of share, you know what, with the nickel, that makes sense. The nickel, I would assume that if you have those clips in, it would probably, you would probably react to them with this much of a reaction.
So he actually knew that the titanium had nickel in it. This doctor did.
Yeah.
And
he
that's
didn't
a good
necessarily
doctor.
say, yeah. Yeah, he didn't necessarily say it, but said, yeah, that would make sense. So he didn't specifically say, oh, nickel in titanium clips, but he said that would make sense if you would react to it. So he probably knows, So then during that 2 weeks of waiting for that blood test to come back, my mom started talking to her brothers because they're all machinists that have worked with metals for 50 years and started telling them my story and what was going on. And they were like very adamant to say that every titanium that they use for medical devices or for any kind of a device has to have some type of an alloy because it's not strong enough. And they said nickel, cobalt, aluminum, those are your top 3 that they're going to put in it because titanium is too soft by itself.
It's nickel and vanadium. You probably don't know, but I was told always it was either nickel or vanadium that it was alloyed with. What do I know?
And I haven't heard that metal before, but they were just very adamant about those 3 that they were telling us about. So as I start learning that, I'm just going, okay, so I want to figure out what are these clips? Really, what are these clips? So anyways, I get the blood test back and the blood test shows high to nickel and moderate to aluminum. So now, and gold wasn't on that panel. The one panel he didn't have gold on it, but so this is internal. So this is blood work. And then the back patch test was external. So they're 2 different tests. And so to me, I was like, okay, that's showing there's a reaction going on, somehow. And so anyways, at that point because this is where I started really becoming like a detective and an advocate because I had gone to my hospital and I had just said, I want samples. Oh, you know why I did this is because I had seen a guy had put some samples of his clips on his back and had taped them on his back and his whole back had just like flared up all red and sensitive to it. So I was like, I want to do that. I'm like
where was this guy?
It actually was when I very first got on the clip group that we met on. I had seen his story. And so I was
love
like,
to get
I'm
that
interested.
picture.
Yeah. I could probably go back and find it. I may have even taken a screenshot. I'm just one of those people. I like to experiment. And I thought either way, if it shows up or if it doesn't, it's just an experiment, And so I called the hospital. I said, I want to get the exact clips that my surgeon uses. And of course, the first lady that answered the phone said, yeah, of course. I'll get them. And then she calls me back probably a day later. I think it was a day later. And it's funny how their personalities kind of change or how they react kind of changes after they talk to somebody else. And so she came back and just kind of was a little snooty about it and says, well, we can't just give out the clips. That's a liability. You can't just get them as a patient. And I was like, okay, well, how do I get them then? Well, you have to have a doctor request them. And I think she didn't think a doctor would request them, right? Luckily, I had a doctor that I had found a little bit down the line that was more of a holistic family doctor, and he had my back through this whole thing. And I'll talk about him a little bit more. And so he basically sent the letter or called him. I can't remember if he called him or faxed it to him and said, I would like to get samples of these clips. And so finally, after a week, we hadn't heard from him. So I called and said, hey, and well, you can't come and get them. We have to deliver them to the doctor's office. And I'm like, okay. So they deliver him to his office, and I go walking in there, and he just takes a couple out of the pack thing and then hands them to me and is like, do whatever you want to do with them. Like he's like, I don't care if you have them. So we did a little experiment, and we put him on my back and, taped him on my back for a night or two. And when I came back, the tape did more effect than the clips. The clips didn't do much, but they're so, so tiny. They're really, really tiny. And so it didn't bother me. I thought either way it comes out, it's not telling me anything except for that it didn't affect me externally, right? So as I'm walking out of his office, I'm like, you know what? And so I'm literally in his hallway thing, and I put the little clips in my ears. And I just stand there for a minute, and within, I would say 10 seconds, all of a sudden my ear starts getting warm, and it starts getting red, and it starts swelling up. So after 30, 40 seconds, I go walking back in the office, and I'm like, doctor, I'm like, look at my ears. And he's like, what the heck? I'm like, can you imagine what's going on the inside of my body if this is what's going on the outside of my body?
I mean,
And
my
he was
ears
in
are
shock.
sensitive, but it usually takes all day. So for you to
Right.
react while you were standing there is
Yeah. My mom was standing right there with me, and my mom was like, go back in and show the doctor, and so I walk in, and I'm like, look at this,
put them in your ear.
I don't know. Just, I think as we were walking out, I saw the mirror, and it just kind of was like, put those in my ears, and
Desperation.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so backing up a little bit. So that was, I did have reactions on both of those tests. So for me, it already started that, okay, I know what my feeling inside is right. I know that I'm reacting to these clips. I've got to figure out how to get these out. So the next step was really trying to find a surgeon besides this other surgeon that doesn't think he does anything wrong. I called, and we only have one general surgeon office here. So they're all in the same office. And so I was a little timid about it because I'm like, well, if they're colleagues, what's going to happen, And so I called and I talked to him, and he said, come in. Yeah, come in and talk to me. I said, I just want a second opinion. So I go in there with my mom, and I tell him my whole story. I'm even emotional by this point because I don't feel good. I don't know what's going on. I'm frustrated. And he sat and listened, and he even said, I know that these clips can be taken out because I've had a colleague that's done it before. And he goes, the only thing that wasn't good was he did end up having a bio leak, and it wasn't good. It was really bad for his health to have that bio leak. But he got it fixed, and he's fine now.
How did they fix it? I haven't heard that story yet. I think all the stories I've heard have pretty happy endings, but that's interesting.
I don't think he ever really got into detail of how they ended up fixing the bio leak. Hopefully they caught it pretty quick, but he said it made him really sick. He just said, my concern would be if you had a bio leak. So he even said he's a doctor that's been a military doctor. And so I'm like, okay, this guy, he'll figure it out. He'll figure out what he needs to do. He could do it with a paper clip and a piece of string if he has to, So he was all on board, and he said, let me research some more. However, I want to send you to another GI doctor because this is the doctor that I deal with a lot. Because I told him I'd gone to a GI doctor, and he goes, I want you to go to a different one. And I was like, okay, if he's referring me, hopefully I'll get in real quick. Right. Well, I called the GI doctor, and 2 months. It's 2 months out. And I even said, Dr. So-and-so, has referred me. We really need to get this figured out. And they just says, nope, we can't get you in any quicker. We'll let you know if there's cancellation. So then that starts the waiting period, right? And so then it got to the point where I was starting to get a lot more sick. It was starting to get more intense. And so I'd call to the doctor's office and say, hey, is there any way that we can see each other? Can you call and get me in earlier? And I felt like I was already starting to get that being ignored and not getting the callbacks and just saying, nope, you have to wait. Nope, you have to wait. And it just was like, okay, and so it's like, what can you do at that point, But I still wasn't going to give up. So in the meantime, so I'm going to correct you on, I didn't have any metal besides the clips because I did have a root canal done that I had a gold crown in. And then I did have some mercury. So as I'm waiting for everything else, I start going down other rabbit holes. Like, okay, I realized that when I got my root canal done at 19, 20 years old was when my heart stuff started, like when the heart palpitations started. So I start kind of connecting the dots there, and I start researching root canals. And it does talk about heavy metals in the stuff that they use in the root canal. I've got a gold crown now in my mouth, and I'm highly allergic to gold. And then I've got this mercury. So I start going down that road of, I need this out of my mouth. I need everything out of my mouth and changed over. So, you got to go to the dentist to take out the mercury and to get the porcelain put in. And I would just plead it and beg, please don't let anything go down in my mouth or let me inhale anything. And they took extra precautions because I was like, I'm already basically, my body's shutting down. I can't have anything else in me. And then I go to the ortho surgeon. And, it's a couple process where they take the gold crown out and then they go in and take out the root canal. And then they try and talk you into putting something else back in there. And they
I didn't
wanted
know
to
you
put
could have a root canal taken out.
Yeah.
I've
Well,
never
if
had
you
a
don't
root
want,
canal. Oh, my dad was always like, he was a holistic doctor before he died, and he was always terribly against them. But I didn't know, like, I thought once you had a root canal, you could never go back. Like it was a done. What do they take out?
well, they just took everything out down that was all the way to the bone. They just took out all the, I'm trying to think of the word of what the actual material it is,
The
but
pulp
it's the material that goes down into, like, basically down into the
where
bone
the
and
root
down into
was.
the, yeah.
Okay.
So they just take all of that out. And I just told him, I says, you got to make sure you take it all out. I can't have anything left in there. And then after I got it taken out, though, they were like, all right, now let's put an implant in. And I was like, no, that's the whole purpose of getting this out. Like, I'm not putting back in. Well, then let's do a bridge. And it was like, no, I'm not going to pay $7,000 when it's, so I literally have a hole in the back of my mouth now because I am too scared to put anything back in. It's interesting, though, how you start kind of putting the pieces together when you really start digging into your health and what you'd been through. And you start kind of, because people talk a lot about that our mouth has a lot to do with our health, right? Especially our heart. So I start putting these things, together, and it just is amazing what end up coming out of it, right? So anyway, so at that point, it was still the waiting game. I started calling my insurance company and just saying, hey, is there anybody else in Utah? Because they say you have to stay in Utah and stay in network. And I said, is there anybody else that, like, we can figure this out? And I had an advocate with the insurance that she was going around calling other doctors. And she had a lot of people say, like, nope, it's too invasive to take the clips out. Nope, she can't react to the clips. Like, she came back and had probably talked to 5 different doctors by the time she'd come back to me, and it said those same things. When you start hearing that, you start getting a little discouraged, and so I forgot to bring up one thing about the allergy doctor, which was interesting because he seemed like a pretty, like, supportive doctor at that point. But when I went back and I told him that I was starting to do the oral surgery and getting my root canal and stuff out, his personality kind of changed. My mom said, I noticed when he realized you had done another procedure, by the time I went back and got my results, she says, I noticed his personality changed a little bit. And he got a little weird about things. And at one point, he even asked me, because I'd started losing weight, if I was an anorexic. And I said, no, I'm not. And he kind of questioned it again. And my mom looks at me and looks at him, and she's like, she is not anorexic. She has always been a small person, but she literally is getting to the point that she can't eat anymore. And it's not on purpose. It's because she's getting nauseous and. But so then it just starts making me feel insecure, and, like, it just starts putting these weird stories in your head, like,
Yeah.
am I creating this? Am I crazy? So I had
Do I
asked him
have
to write.
Munchausen syndrome?
Right. Yeah. And, or is it just that anxiety of knowing something's going on? And so the anxiety
Yeah.
makes you not,
Yeah.
eat and not sleep. And it's just a whole
Right.
snowball, and so at that point, I'd asked him, each doctor I'd talked to, I was like, can you give me a letter to back me, to show, that I need to get these clips out? And he writes this letter and he emails it to me. And I remember I was sitting at my sister's house and I pull up the letter and I start reading it. And he talks all about the allergies with the back patch test and the blood work and all that. And the very last sentence, and I can't remember word for word, but he basically said that he thought that I was a hypochondriac. He used the word hypochondriac, and that I was just chasing surgeries and procedures.
And
Can
he
you
sent
believe
that
that?
letter to you? No, I can't believe that at all.
Yeah, to be a support
you-
letter.
Did you ever go back to him later in the journey? If you did, I want to hear about that. So make sure you tell me.
No, I did. I did very quickly. I
Okay.
went home very upset. I was bawling Because again, it puts it in my head. Am I a
Of
hypochondriac? Am I
course.
creating this? Am I, even though deep down you're not, it's still, you know,
Sure.
your mind's not connecting all the time. So you do question it, right? So I called his office and I told his assistant that I wanted to talk to him because I was very upset. And the next couple of days, I was really, really sick. And he tried calling me 3 or 4 times, and I knew it wasn't good for me to talk to him at that point. And finally, about the third or fourth day, he called and I finally answered it. And I remember laying in bed talking to him, and I just told him how disappointed I was. And that I told him, "You are not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. All I needed to know from you is if I was allergic to metals. I don't know why you felt that that was important to put that in there when you know I needed that as a document to try and get these clips out." And
Go, Lacey.
that's where I was like, I'm
Go,
fighting for this and
girl.
I'm going to be an advocate, and he, tried to get defensive at first and talk his talk and, the things. But by the end, he finally kind of loosened up a little bit. And he said, "You know what, Lacey?" He's like, "You're right." And I said, "We come to you for a certain thing and we come to you trusting you." And I told him, when you asked me, I said, "I know you still need to ask people questions about maybe their weight and stuff like that, but it's the way you delivered the question that really made me feel uncomfortable. And then you writing this when you knew I needed that." And I said, "I am not a hypochondriac. I am not looking for that. And you don't know that. You don't know that. You're not in the profession to know if I am or not." So and I just really told him strongly that I didn't like that. So he says, "What would you like me to do, Lacey?" I said, "I would like you to redact it. I would like you to fix it." And he made sure it showed that he had redacted it and that there was something before in there, which kind of sucks in a way because if I ever had to take it, to court or do anything with it, they would have pulled the original one, right?
It's like a
So,
slap in the face.
yeah, it was. It was very discouraging for sure. So, each doctor, each appointment, each everything just kind of just starts making you really feel like you're crazy. And
Yeah.
I did. I really, there was multiple times I kept feeling like, am I just snowballing this and making it worse because I don't know how to take care of my lifestyle when I don't feel good. I don't know how to stay in a positive mind frame when I don't feel good. I don't know how to not be nauseous when I'm eating. Like I didn't know how to use tools enough to think that I wasn't crazy at that point, right? So it was hard. In the end, it was really hard. I was getting to that point where it's like, well, if I am creating it, I guess I'm going to go all the way to the end with it, because I was getting to the point where I could actually start feeling my body shutting down, you know. And so, anyways, in between some of this too, I had gotten on to Facebook. My mom had found that Facebook group that we met in. And I think at the time when I got in there was maybe 100, maybe 120 people in there. And I don't even know how many's in there now. It's
There's
probably
thousands in there now.
thousands. Yeah. So, I mean, it
Yes,
was
there's
the very,
thousands.
very beginning. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I kind of watch stories, but when you're sick, it's like, it's hard to really be in it. And, you're up in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock and you're stressed that you're not going to, wake up in the morning. So you start writing your story or asking questions. And we still see that on there. People are stressed and worried and they're just asking questions and just stressed about it. Well, at that time, there was only a couple people that was really going through the end part of it, really getting help. Everybody else was in the same position I was in where we were distressed and sick and trying to figure out what's going on. So
And what year was this?
this would have been 2018. No,
Okay.
2019, October 2019.
Okay.
And so at that time, I was basically just talking with with two people right now who had gone out to Austin to Dr. Linez and had gotten their clips out. He did it as just an experimental kind of exploratory for them. He just said, "I can't promise anything. This is what's going on," so I watched their story and both of them right away got relief. Everyone's journey after they've gotten the clips out have all been different. Every single person's been different because we're all different, right? We all have different bodies. We have different genetics. We have all different stuff and lifestyle. So nobody's the same, but I had seen how much the life came back into them, that gray look, and then the life came back into them. And so I just knew in every cell of my body that I needed these clips out. So I started reaching out to Dr. Linez's office in Austin, and all I was asking him was, well, actually, I love it. I called there the very first time I called there. His assistant put me on hold, and he got right on the phone and talked to me. He just gets on the phone and goes,
Wow.
"Oh, wait, what's your story? What's going on?" And he let me tell my whole story to him on the
And
phone.
he's
I was
the
like, "What
nicest
doctor?"
guy.
Yeah, I'm like, "What doctor does that?" And and I don't know
That's
if
a
it was just
sign.
because it was yeah, and I don't know if it was just because it was new because he had just taken out the other two, and so he's like, "What's going on here?" Here's another one, and So I told them my story and I said, all I'm asking is if maybe you would call the surgeon's office here that I'd gone to and just tell them what you did. Tell them what you did. Tell them the experience you had with these two. Tell them how you did it so that there was no, bio leak and all that. So then they would know that this is legit and it's possible to take them out because every doctor says it's too invasive. We're not taking it out. It's another
Hmm.
procedure.
Right.
And so he started calling my surgeon's office and not getting a reply back, not getting a reply back. Or they would say, nope, she has to go to the GI doctor first, or no reply back. Like they just would not answer back to him. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? They're not going to do this. At this point, I was like, I don't want them to do it anymore. Why would I want somebody who is so against doing it go in and try and help me,
Right.
So at that point, it turned into, okay, where do I go from here now? And so that's when I really reached out to the insurance company. I started calling up to different places up in northern Utah because we have a, U of U up there, and we've got a lot of different,
Right.
better hospitals than what we do down here for sure. And so at one point, I called U of U and I told them my situation. I said, I need to find out if you guys have any surgeons that believe that I could react to these clips or if they're open to taking them out. And she goes, we have an A team up here who takes on all these weird procedures and surgeries and all these weird stuff. And she goes,
Now you're in a
she
weird
goes, hold
procedure.
on. I know. And I am. I've been called weird and interesting and everything, basically my whole life with health stuff. So I was just like, whatever, and so she goes, hold on, let me go ask them. And she puts me on hold. And I'm like, she's just going to put me on hold and go ask these surgeons, and she put me on hold for about 10 minutes and I waited and she came back and she, thank you for waiting. And she says, yeah, I talked to the A team and they said they would take this on. And I was like, oh, this is great. And she goes, so we're going to have to set up a consultation. So you'll have to come up for that. And then we'll set up a time to see this doctor. And then we'll set up a time for you to see this doctor. And so she starts talking about me going to northern Utah, which is a 4 to 5 hour drive multiple
Without
times.
traffic.
Right. But at this time, I know my body is starting to shut down. I'm like, I don't have it in me. I can't travel back and forth and still wait and wait and wait. Like I was to the point where I knew I was running out of time. And so I just told her, I says, I can't. I gotta figure out something else.
By running
So
out
at
of
this
time,
point,
you mean you felt like you were dying?
absolutely. There was many, many nights that I sat with my mom and I just says, Mom, I'm scared that if I go to sleep tonight, I'm not gonna wake up. Because luckily I was living with my mom at that point. I was in between moving. And when I started getting worse, my mom just says, you're not going nowhere. You're staying here till we get this figured out. And I'm just so grateful, because I had a teenage son at the time. And so my mom was able to help me. And I very strongly remembered sitting on the couch with her multiple nights. And even one night, it got so bad that she picked me up like a baby and held me. And I just cried. And she had just lost her parents that same year. And so it was so hard for me because I didn't want to be a burden. I'm a very strong, independent woman. And to
Yep.
end up in the arms of my mom at 40 years old, that was really hard. And I didn't want her to have to see her daughter die in the same year that her parents just died, and so it was very hard. It was very hard. But when you get to that point where you're so sick and you're so tired,
Right.
it's not giving up. It really is just surrendering that you're just like, you get scared to go to sleep, but it's almost like before I would go to sleep, I'd just say, I guess if this is it, like I love my family. And, I was making sure I knew who was going to be taking care of my kids, what was going to be going on. I made sure I had my ducks in a row in case, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember writing my will and telling my husband how to pay the bills.
Yeah. And that's a hard pill to swallow, it's like,
Yep.
but I don't want to be a burden even when I'm gone.
Right.
And so this is where it started getting really interesting was because I remember sitting in Costco and I got a call from my insurance and I was with my son. And the lady called me and she says, Lacey, I just need to call and let you know that no matter where you go or who you go to, because I'd asked them, can I go out of state? Can I go to Texas? Can I go somewhere else? And they had said no because it was out of network. And so she called me. She says, no matter who you go to, even if it's in state, in network, anything, we're not going to cover the surgery. And I was like, why? And she says, because it says that they cannot prove that the clips is what's causing the issue. And I just sat there in disbelief.
I don't know if you know this, and I discussed this on my first episode, but the hardware companies actually say that when you no longer need the hardware, you're supposed to have it removed. And my understanding from the few surgeons I've talked to is a foreign body reaction doesn't even have to get an approval through surgery. They have carte blanche to just take it out. So that surprises me that your insurance said that.
Interesting. See, and I didn't know that. That's
Mhm.
interesting. So it's like, is it based on insurances, whether they decide how our life,
Yeah.
how
I don't
our
think
future
so,
is?
but something to
Crazy.
ongoing research.
For sure. Yeah. And it was very devastating because when she told me that, I just felt like it was over. I felt like, okay, now, like, I can't go and spend whatever 20 grand or however much it was going to be to have a surgery to do this. Like, I was down to, I was still working full time and taking care of myself and my kids, but I was doing the bare minimum. I didn't have extra money to just throw out another surgery. And what was frustrating was that during that time, so I'd had the scope and colonoscopy, I'd had my gallbladder removal. This is on 14 months. This is crazy. I'd already had a hysterectomy, a half hysterectomy years before, but I still had one ovary. Well, I started getting cysts on my ovary during this. And so I went and got my other cyst out. I did the oral surgery with all my mouth. Once I did physical therapy, 20 sessions of physical therapy on my back, it did not help a thing. I ended up going to a pain doctor and he ended up doing a back ablation on my back. And then I did end up having a heart surgery through all that, which I don't know if the clips caused more heart issues for me. Probably did because of the stress and everything that was going on. I did have an SVT ablation done also on my heart. So I had 6 procedures done within 14 months.
And
And so
nothing
the
compared
thing,
to the gallbladder. So,
right.
yeah,
And
there's a
what's
pattern.
well, yeah, and then you think about it, the insurance covered all of that. All of those things the insurance covered. But then when I went to
Except the
them and
thing that's
said,
killing you.
exactly. And that's what I told them. I says, now that I know exactly what it is, but they said there's no proof. So I just had somebody say, you know what, just figure out how to do it, pay the cash, and then just come back and try and fight it because you're running out of time. Because I got to the point where I was just defeated. I was defeated. And so I went home and told my mom what they said, and I was just bawling. And she just says, well, Lacey, we got our answer. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, if we got to pay cash for this, she goes, we're going to go to somebody who knows what to do and who is already supporting you on that. And so, like, honestly, Dr. Linus is an angel. So we called him. We called him in Austin, Texas, and we just told him what was going on. And I just says, I don't know what to do. And I told him, Dr. Linus, I'm dying and I don't have time to keep running in these circles. And he says, when can you get out here? And my mom just, whispers, tell him as soon as possible, and we didn't,
Tomorrow.
he did. He seriously was like, I think we called him like on a Monday or Tuesday. And he's like, can you be here on Friday or something? It was really quick. And we were like, wait a minute, let us think about this for a minute. We got to get flights. We got to get hotels. I got to get work
Right.
off. So we kind of were like, hold on for a minute. We're like, let's do next week. And so we set up that we were going to see Dr. Linus on Tuesday. And then he goes, I'm just going to set up the surgery on Wednesday, but I'm not going to promise anything. I'm not going to promise anything. I'm just going to see you on that Tuesday. But let's just, if everything goes good, but he had seen stuff. I'd already sent him all my ER visits, with CT scans and MRIs and X-rays. I told him all my symptoms. I told him about my metal testing, sent him all that. So he had seen a lot of what I had already. So I think he was like, we'll set it up, and just knew he was probably going to go into it, but
Mhm.
he's good about not promising anything unless he knows for sure, which I appreciate. Right. This is when it got really hard because I had to become very humble and very dependent on other people. My mom had all of her money into buying a house and didn't have any money at the time. I didn't have any money at the time, but we knew we had to have some money to go out there, right? And so I never thought I was going to have to do a GoFundMe. And my mom set up a GoFundMe, and I remember just bawling while she was setting it up. Because I just never thought I would have to be the one on that end, Like, I'm the one that loves to support people and help people. And it was very hard, for sure. But it was amazing because within just a couple of days of my mom sharing, because people had watched my journey for the year and they knew what was going on,
And they knew you.
Right, right. And even people that didn't know me, my mom has all these groups, these paint rock groups, like she has all these groups that she shared it out to, and people that didn't even know me heard my story and they donated. And that's where I just love community has become such a big part of my life now, because by that point I had made my circle really small. When you don't feel good, you don't reach out to friends. You don't go out and build new friendships. You even cut off, friendships that you feel like are just, hey, I'm a burden to them now, or maybe they don't
Spoons.
care. Yeah. So I had my little small group of friends, and then I had my family, and that was about it at that point. And so to see the abundance come in within those couple of days was just very overwhelming. I just kept telling my mom, how am I going to tell everybody thank you? How am I going to pay everybody back? And my mom's like, when you donate, do you expect a thank you or for money to come back? And I was like, no, but it was really hard for my personality because I'm just such a strong independent person. But it's taught me a lot for sure the last few years. And um, so anyway, so we get the money together, and okay, so here's the interesting part. I had talked to the two people that had gotten their surgeries done. And when I started telling them how much I was told it was going to be to go out and get the surgery done, they just kept coming back going, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense because even on our bill for our insurance, it's just not matching up. It shouldn't be that much. And when I told them what hospital I was going to, they said, that's a different hospital than what we went to. So that Friday before I flew out to Austin, I left a message for his assistant and I just said, hey, can we just double look this? Because if I'm going to pay cash, I want to pay the bare minimum I have to. And
Yeah.
so if there's something else going on that I need to do, So over the weekend, me and my mom fly out to Austin, and I'm barely hanging in by this time. I'm eating mangoes and olives were basically the only things I could eat. I would try and get a couple bites of chicken in once in a while because I knew I needed some protein. But I just remember I would just try and eat those first couple bites as quick as I could because I would just get nauseous. And I'm already low weight anyways. Like I'm a smaller person. And so my normal weight's around like 108. By the time we left to go to Austin, I was at 92 pounds. And I know that that's a big percentage, right? Off of what.
Sure.
And so I didn't have a lot to lose anyways. And so that was one of the turning points for my mom was a couple days before we went to Austin. When I went on the scale, she was like, all right, this is it. Like you can't lose any more weight. This isn't gonna, you're just gonna, I wasn't gonna make it. I could feel my body like shutting down literally. And I just had that gray look, and I have a before and after picture I think we're gonna put up too that
We are.
it was just that gray look where you see people and you're just like, oh, and it's sad
Hollow
because
eyes and hollow skin and sunken features. And
yeah,
yeah.
I did not feel like myself in any way, any shape or way. I didn't feel like myself anymore. I felt like I was in a dream at that point, and so we flew out to Austin, and my mom and I are pretty high anxiety when we travel, when we drive or when we fly and stuff. But because I was sick and because my mom was having to take care of me, it was a different feeling going out there. And once we got out there, it was actually interesting because we had 2 days to kind of prepare. We got out there on a Sunday and we didn't see Linus until Tuesday. And I remember just having this overwhelming calmness to me. And my mom also had that calmness. I was actually able to eat a little bit more. And so again, the stories we tell ourselves in our brain, I was like, crap, have I been like creating this? And now that I'm here getting this done, like, am I better? Like, I mean, because
I had those
my
thoughts,
symptoms
yeah.
kind of calm. Yeah. It's like they had calmed down a little bit, but they were still there. Right. And looking back at it now, I sometimes kind of wonder, like, actually, I know in my heart that I probably was not going to make it through that surgery. I knew that I had a 50-50 chance. I knew that I'd been through too much. I knew my body had gone through too much trauma, had too much, anesthesia in me, too much medicines and, supplements. And like, I didn't even know what I was taking anymore. Like, my body was just not functioning and I was so deprived. And I just knew that I told my mom, I says, at least if I go right now, grandma and grandpa are up there, wherever we go, and I'm comforted with that thought, and so it wasn't like I was scared anymore, which is weird for me because I used to be really scared of dying. So we got to
Good. You
Austin.
can give me some pointers. Ah,
I think when you get that close, it kind of changes the way you think about it, but so we get out there and, let me back up a little bit because I think this is really important what had happened. And I don't want to bring religion into this because I'm not really religious yet. This was a big turning point for me of my mindset about things was right before I left to go to Austin. I remember I was talking to my daughter and she was out on a church mission and she says, Mom, have you gotten a blessing?
for
No, I
people
haven't
who don't
lately.
live in Utah, that might sound a little weird. So you might just say what that is.
It's just basically a prayer of like either healing or comfort or, and in I think in any religion, they have that type of just a prayer or like a healing type of whatever they want to call it, but we
Okay.
call it a blessing. And so my brother has the right to give that type of a blessing. And so I called my brother. He was on his way home from work, and I says, "Can you come over and give me a blessing?" Because at this point was the point where I was basically dying. Like I had told my daughter, I says,
Mhm.
"Babe, I
Yeah.
don't know. I was literally telling my daughter, I don't know if I'm going to see you again, and that's hard to tell your kid, you know." And so my brother comes over and he sits down, and I remember a couple blessings I had over the year. He had sat down and would just do the blessing and just do the blessing of healing and getting
Mhm.
answers and doing all the things.
Sure.
This one was a little bit different. He sat down and he just said, "Well, what do you want this blessing to be?" And to me, that was a little like, "What do you mean? What do I want it to be?" Like, I don't want to
I
get
wanna
better. I
rise
want to
up
get,
and walk.
yeah, like take this all away. Miracles, you know? And so it frustrated me a little bit. And, you know, when I'm sick, I have a short fuse and I get a little snappy, you know, and I just said, well, if he's done with me, then he's done with me and have him take me. But if he's not done with me, I need answers. And I was very stern and I was very snappy and know that I probably, you know, rubbed people the wrong way when I didn't feel good, but at that point I didn't care. So he gave me a blessing of comfort. And knowing now what that was is most people when they are passing, you get that blessing of comfort instead of healing. And later on in, you know, later down the line I talked to him about it and he did say that he felt like he was giving me a blessing of that if I was to pass, that I just had comfort, you know? And it's hard to swallow that knowing that now because I knew I was dying, but I didn't think anybody else did. I didn't think
Mhm.
anybody else did. I still thought everybody thought that it was just me being sick and me being annoying and me being whatever they thought about it. But knowing now how many people really thought, Lacey, I didn't even think I was going to see you, you know, like we really didn't think that you were going to come back. And it just, so it's hard to swallow a little bit, but I'm glad nobody said it to me in the moment because I probably would have bit off their heads, right? Because I was very
Right.
short fused, you know. So anyway, so we get out to Austin. So it's that very calming feeling. And I have energy worker friends. They had been working on me energy wise. I had people with our church putting my name into the temple. I had people praying. I had so many people working on me at that time in different ways. And I feel like that's where the calmness came in was to let me and my mom kind of just get through that, you know, what we needed to get through. And so we ended up going and seeing Dr. Linus on that Tuesday. And he was amazing. I mean, I brought my 4 pages, you know, of every little thing. And, you know, I'm very organized and structured. And I brought this to him and just handed it to him. And I just said, this is everything I've done in 14 months. And he looks through all of it and he just looks up at me and he just goes, Lacey, there's nothing else I can ask you to do. You have checked off all the boxes, which in it, it's annoying that you're checking off the boxes. But for him to just move right forward and to go into the surgery, I was
Sure.
like, yes, like I did everything I needed to do. You know, even though it was all annoying and I did a lot, it paid off at that moment. I just felt that relief of, okay, that's what all that was for, was that so this moment would just be able to move forward, right? So, and he saw me and saw that I was that gray color and the 92 pounds. And he just was like, we're going to do this. He goes, and he told me the same thing. I'm not going to promise anything. We're just going to consider it like a exploratory surgery. So at this point, going back to kind of the money and the insurance thing or the money in the hospital thing, we found out that he does surgeries at 2 different hospitals. And depending, everybody knows that hospital code, surgery codes, if you put in a different code, it can be a whole different thing.
Right.
So when I left that message with his assistant, she called me back right before we saw Dr. Linus and she said, we're going to move you to a different hospital. And it was St. David's South Hospital. And we're going to change one code on it, but we're going to make sure that we have the right machines to do. And I'll explain when we go into the surgery part of it what they need to do to make sure I don't have the bile leak.
Mhm.
So she goes, so call the hospital. She goes, the doctor bill will still be the same. The surgeon bill will still be the same. And the anesthesia will still be the same, but call the hospital because that'll be different. So what I was told in the beginning is I had to come out there with $7,000 to $8,000. But when I came home, I was going to have over 20 grand of debt. And so we got all that $7,000 to $8,000 together just to get me out there. And my mom just said, if you got to pay $50 a month for the rest of your life, it's worth living. So we got to do it. Right. So we get out there. So then anyway, she tells me, call the hospital. So I call the hospital and the lady says, well, yeah. So when you come in, bring in $7,495, whatever it was. And I said, okay. And then how much do I leave with, like owing? And she goes, no, Lacey, that's the total amount for the hospital bill. And I look over at my mom and me and my mom just start bawling. And we're like, what? And she's like, yeah, we're a nonprofit. And if you pay with cash, you get this huge discount. I think it was like
Wow.
90% discount or something like that.
Wow.
And that
How
just
much?
changed.
How much was it at the other play? At the other, you didn't say how much. I don't
Well,
think
they just said I was going to end up coming back with like 20 plus $1,000 in debt,
after
you
the
know, of
7,000, so
yeah.
almost
So
30. Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm assuming. They didn't really give me because they says, well, sometimes with surgeries, you don't know what's going to happen. So it'll be around 20 grand, probably more. So that was a relief. And I only wanted to bring that part up because I know a lot of people go out to there and a lot of people ask us about travel and about hospital and about all the things and insurance and
Mhm.
paying cash. And
Yeah.
so it's a relief to know that there's a hospital that he works in that is willing to do that for people that will pay cash because a lot of people are going out paying cash right now. So anyway, so yeah, so that was a great relief because you go into a surgery and you're worrying about bills, and when you go home, you don't heal as good. I don't feel like because it's that big weight and that big burden on your shoulder of money, which sucks. That doesn't help us heal.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Attention metalheads. Are you struggling with skin rashes, joint and systemic pain, or fatigue that just won't go away? Type 4 metal allergy is often overlooked as a culprit in many of today's chronic illnesses. Get to the root of the problem with ELISA testing. ELISA is a scientifically proven and clinically validated test that measures immune reactivity to metal allergens like nickel, cobalt, and titanium. With fast and reliable results, you can get the answers you need to find relief and live a healthier life. Don't let metal allergies control your life any longer. Visit melisa.org to learn more and schedule your test. Trust us, you'll be glad you did. Melisa, a valuable diagnostic tool in medicine.
So at this point, we get out there, we see Dr. Linus. He's like, we're going to do this. So the next day, I actually slept very well that evening. I was very, very calm. And I still keep thinking at that moment, I wasn't supposed to make it that next day. I feel it in my whole soul that I wasn't supposed to make it that next day. So yeah, so then we get there on that Tuesday morning, we get into the hospital, and I kind of tease when I talk about this part and I laugh about it, but it actually was very profound to me that when I got there, I really feel like that it was like this hospital in heaven. Like it was just, you walked in there and just the energy and the feeling of it. And everybody from the front desk lady to, the lady that comes and takes you to the back to the ones that come and start undressing you and doing, I mean, everybody was just so sweet and had the best energy. And like, we were very calm. And I don't know, I've had a couple of people tell me the same experience. And so I don't know what it is about that place, but I'm like, if I went back there and it wasn't there, I wouldn't be surprised because it was a,
Now,
a hospital that was in heaven.
mine was at Christus Santa Rosa, but yours was at a different place?
Yeah, mine was St. David's South.
Okay, I didn't get to go to the Heaven
Yeah.
Hospital.
Oh,
Oh,
dang
well.
it. It's interesting the certain parts of your experience that's more profound for other people. And that one was just really, it just sticks out
Sure.
to me because of how much we go through to be able to end it at that point of being a very calm and very just accepting and good energy. It just
Right.
was amazing. So we get there and they get me all ready. And one of the ladies who ended up getting her clips out that lived close to Austin, she actually came up to the hospital, sat with my mom and talked with us and talked with Dr. Linus. And it was so sweet because it was just that support of the community again, right? So she'd
Right.
never met. I mean, we'd talked, but we'd never like met or anything. And so I just love that she came up there. Like that was so sweet. And so Dr. Linus comes in and explains what they do in the surgery. He comes in and explains that he's going to do laparoscopic again. But what they do is they actually put an IV in you, like an IV, and then they put this green dye that goes through your system. And then when he's in there, after he goes in and takes out the clips, he lights it up. And then the green dye, if it starts coming through the bile duct area, that means that it didn't heal and that he would just go in and put one little stitch in there if it didn't. But he says if he watches it for a while and there's no leak, then that means it's healed and I wouldn't need a stitch. So he said, either way, you're either just one little stitch. He's like, I won't put any metal. I won't do anything else, but it'd be one little
Sure.
stitch and just let it heal. So I felt very good about that.
Now, were you freaked out about the green dye? Because I didn't know about the green dye till I got there, and I was totally freaked out about it. I don't know if I even texted you, but I was totally freaked out because by this time, you've had other stuff in your body that hasn't worked out so well. I didn't know anything
Right.
about the green dye.
Yeah. I think at that point, I think I was a little bit freaked out about it, but I think I was just to the point where I was like, okay, in the next hour, either I'm survivor or I'm moving on. And I kind of just
Yeah.
I was surrendering at that point where I was just like, let's see what happens here. Anyway, so I loved everybody who worked on us. Dr. Linus came in. I just can't praise him enough of his just personality and his energy and just how much he was just a support. And so anyway, so I think he ended up giving me just a little bit of like like to calm the system before they took me back. They didn't give me
Mm-hmm.
the full anesthesia yet. And I remember like, is it like the movies where I have to be like, Mom, I'm going to miss you and love you if I didn't know if it was going to be like that because I honestly still felt out this moment that I probably wasn't going to make it. But just having that calming from the hospital and from Dr. Linus and just how calm my mom was, I just was like, you know what, like, I'll see you soon. And even though I still felt like I may not make, I didn't feel like I had to do the whole goodbye because it was just like, everything's going to be okay, whether it happens or not. It was just that calming feeling.
Yeah.
And so they start taking me back. And I tease out this part, but it's very emotional for me too, is I remember, when you were younger and you'd like plead to God, like, please God, if you just let Michael like me, I'll do anything in the world. Like you do that and just funny pleading of like, I'll do anything. I'll do anything if you just give me what I want right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I went to. I kind of went to just like, please God, if you'll get me through this, like I will help as many people as I can to not have to experience what I just went through. I mean, I just kept just saying this in my brain and just in my heart and just, God, please let me get through this. Because at that moment I was getting willed away. I was like, this is it for me. This is probably it for me. And I just didn't feel like it was my time yet. And so I really started pleading. And I honestly think that I changed my path at them.
We're
I honestly
powerful.
do. Yeah.
I believe it. I believe it.
And it's really profound to me that I feel like I changed it. In the moment, I didn't realize how important that prayer was and how much that was going to change my life. But it did. It did.
And look
I
at you
honestly feel
here
it.
paying it back.
Yes.
She's making good on
And
it, y'all.
doing it, just especially this right now, sharing our story is the most important part of it, right? And so anyway, so he goes in, he does the surgery. My bile duct is already healed. He doesn't have to put a stitch in. He watches it. I think he said he watched it for 30 minutes. Everything was good. And he ended up taking out 6 clips. And I remember I
Oh, that's
told
a
him at one
lot.
point, I know. Well, and you hear when you actually look it up, it shows that they usually say 2 to 3 or 2 to 5 or something like that. And
Right.
everybody so far who has gotten them taken out, I think have had 5 or more. So
I
it's
had 3. I
interesting.
had 3.
Okay. You're the least amount that I've heard then is the 3.
Well, thank
Okay.
God for that.
Yes. And I don't know. I don't know if more or less is worse on our body, right? Or if it
Oh,
just reacts the same.
yeah.
I don't
I
know.
think more is worse. I think more is worse.
Probably. But yeah, so but I remember telling him that there was a couple times where I felt like there was a little electrical shock, like right where the clips were
Mhm.
at. And he kind of told me little stories about when he went in there. He says there wasn't a ton of scar tissue around it as much. He thought there would have been a lot more. And then he said that there was 2 that were close enough that he thinks what had happened is maybe when I'd move a certain way, they'd kind of hit each other and then maybe
Mm.
kind of do that like electrical shock.
Okay. Yeah, like a
And so
reaction.
hearing that, you know what it went to is making me start thinking is I think having the metal in my mouth affected some of my health, right? Maybe my heart and stuff. But I think when they put those clips in, I think I keep thinking I'm like just having 2 things just did like just
There
a
was
reaction that just
Well, we
turned
now know
everything
that
on.
there's a galvanic reaction between them. Did you know that you can actually measure the current, correct?
No, I
Did you
did
know
not
that?
know that.
Oh,
No.
yeah. So Dr. Scott Schroeder, who's going to be a guest on the podcast in future episodes, actually conducted an experiment during surgery where he uses I don't know what you call it. I'm not a guy, a voltmeter of some sort, and actually put it on inside when the metal was there and outside, and it like completely decreased. Like the voltage was super high and then it went down to like super low after the metal was removed. So it can actually, I always felt like I had electricity running through my body. And like I couldn't wear an Apple Watch because I felt like I was plugged into a light
Yep.
socket because I have significantly more metal than you. But yes, it's called a galvanic reaction, and you can actually measure the current. Some metals have a positive charge and some have a
Mhm.
negative charge, and they can create measurable electric current between them. So there you go.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I guess my intuition was right because that's all I kept
Right,
picturing was that
right.
and then too, it's like we have foreign objects in our bodies and that can just turn, our genes on that are going to express
Right.
eventually. You have trauma. So I just felt
Yes.
like it just lit everything up in my body. And I think everybody else has kind of had that same experience where it just turns everything on. And that's where we start getting symptoms. And so, yeah. So going back, so everything went good with the surgery. He came out and I just told my mom, like, 6 clips. Everything went good. I can see why she probably was having a little bit of that electrical shock because two of them were really close to each other. And then he just says, yeah, he's like, and we end up doing it more in the afternoon. So a lot of people ask, do we go home that day or do we go home the next day or stay 5 days? And my advice is I always tell people, like, if you can't go that first or second day, then wait till like the fifth or sixth day, because that like third or fourth day of any surgery is the hardest part of it. Right. And so if you're going to travel, I'm always like, either go when you got the anesthesia in you or wait till you've gotten a couple days through, right?
Sure.
So yeah, so me and my mom just stayed the night, and that next morning we heading to the airport and flying out. And I mean, now I had just gotten out of surgery, so of course, like I'm tired and I'm sore and all those things. But I already started seeing a change. And that's the key part of it, is how quickly things started fading away.
And you're how many hours out of surgery?
With not even 24 hours yet. Like we went to the airport, and my mom said, "Do you feel like eating anything?" We had like a layover for an hour somewhere. And I was like, "Yeah, I think she got me a sandwich or something." And I ended up eating the whole thing. And that was the first time I had really kind of had a whole meal.
Okay.
Well, I think she maybe gave me a half a sandwich because she's probably like, she's not going to eat it. So I think we shared a sandwich, but I ate the whole half
Right.
of a sandwich, which was a lot for me at that time. And so we flew home, and I got home, and I remember, like, I think it was either that first night home or the second night home, my stepdad had made his spaghetti dinner that he always makes us. And I remember sitting down and I just started eating it and eating it. And it tasted different. It tasted so good. And I was eating it so fast because I kept thinking I was going to get nauseous again, because we're trained of how we had been for so long. Right. And so I'm like
Sure.
eating fast, and I'm eating. And I remember I was like, oh my gosh, that tastes so good. And I look up to my stepdad and my mom. I'm like, can I get some more? And they're just like, because they had seen me only be able to take 2 bites and get sick. And now I'm asking for seconds, so this is within days. So I remember, though, very profoundly again, I can't remember if it was the second or third day I was home. I remember laying in bed. You mentally and emotionally still have to work on things when you get home. Just because you get the clips out and you start feeling better, you still have a lot to work on. And
there's a lot of
I remember
trauma.
there is, and fear of stuff. Even though I'm starting to feel better, is it going to come back, or is it going to, And I remember laying there thinking, okay, there were so many times I thought, did I create this? Because am I crazy? Did I create this? And then to come home and start having symptoms go away that quick, the same feeling was there. Am I crazy? Did I create this? And now it's going away because I created this? Like, I was still questioning myself in the mental part of it.
Well, our brains are so powerful. The brain can perpetuate symptoms, and you don't know if
Right.
that's really. I had moments when I was like super sick that, like, my favorite songwriter came and played a concert at my home, and I got to sing with him, and I was like able to be up all day. So I think our
Yes.
brains are powerful, but looking back at my journey, and I don't know if you feel the same way, it wouldn't have been powerful enough to overcome the allergy to
Yeah.
the metal without medical
Correct.
intervention.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so but once I could kinda get past that mental part of it for the first couple of days, and I started seeing more and more symptoms slow down or calm down, and some were going away. I mean, some of the ones that went away pretty quick was the nausea, and then the pain right where the gallbladder was at, the brain fog. Like, all of a sudden, like, it felt clear. Like, it was the weirdest thing. Like, I was just like, I didn't have that confusion, and I'm a talker, and by the time I got to the point of going to get my clips, I couldn't even make sentences. I was forgetting words. There was so many, like, I couldn't hardly talk at that point. And within days of coming home, had a clear brain. I could talk normal. I was back to my fast talking again and all that. And so it was just crazy how quickly, that those things started fading away. And so I went to, I think it was like 3 or 4 days into it, I just all of a sudden just had all this like energy. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I'm healed. It was kind of that like, oh my gosh, I could just get back to life. And I got up and I was like, I want to go for a walk. And my mom was just like, hold on, like, you just about died. Like, let's just go around the first block and we'll walk slow. And so I calmed myself, and I knew I needed to really work on my body now. I knew that I had been deprived from a lot of stuff. So I calmed down, and I just was like, okay, I'm going to take this slow and listen to my body, give my body a voice, and let it just tell me what it needs to do.
But
Um,
girl, you got it all out, like all of it. I
yeah,
can't even imagine being able to go
yeah,
back to that place. You got to rewind the whole thing. Well,
yes,
how would that
right.
be?
Yeah. Well, and knowing too that, like, as soon as I started going through my health journey at this point, I started passing the point of even before when I got my gallbladder out, I started doing better. And this is where the key is I think a lot of people get the clips out and then they go back home and they go back to their same lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key for me is, I do have people reach out all the time and say, how come you're doing so good? How come everyone, how come you're doing so much better than everybody? Because I changed my lifestyle. I realized that I had gotten a second chance. And so when I got home, I started doing a lot of different things that changed my lifestyle with my nutrition and with my mental and emotional and the physical. I just started changing all the elements because I didn't want to go back to even where I was at in the beginning. I wanted to do better. I had a second chance at life. I wanted to make a
Right.
difference. I needed the energy to be able to help other people. And at that point, I had tons of people reaching out to me because of what I'd been through. And it really got overwhelming. And I'll be honest, and most people realized that I had to step back for a second because I was still trying to heal. And it mentally and emotionally overtook me for a little bit of so many people reaching out that I had to go, hold on. I need to take care of me for a second and then I'll come back. Right.
Yeah.
And so I
All
did
the
that.
emotions.
Yeah. It was overwhelming because I went from being so sick that within a week of getting those clips out, I was already moving to like my health journey. And so it was almost like I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to look back.
Sure.
I didn't want to admit that it's there anymore because I don't want it to come back. Right. And I just kept moving forward every day. And so there was a point where I kind of had to just stop for a minute and just make sure I take care of Lacey so that then I could get better and help other people. And so I just started doing all different kinds of stuff, anywhere from changing my eating for sure, because we know that with nickel allergies, we got to change what we're eating. I started doing more physical. I always thought because I was a small person that I didn't have to worry about the physical element. I just thought, well, I don't have to worry about weight. But now knowing that the physical element is not just about weight, the physical is getting a strong core and it's keeping our body moving. And we need to do that every day, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
drinking more water and healthy water, and I just started learning because I'd gotten in this community where we were learning how to do these elements. And I was like, okay, even just my relational, right? Because I'd made my circle so small that it's like, okay, now I get to grow relationships and get that abundance of having relationships and stuff. And so I opened my heart up and I opened up to just whoever wanted to talk to me, whoever wanted to get to know me. And I loved hearing other people's stories. I was just really connecting with people. And I ended up doing a genetics test where I found out about my detox issues, which plays another part when you have a foreign object in your body. My mom passed that down for me because she actually went through the breast implant issue where her body rejected the breast implants. So mine was a kind of a double whammy. I'm allergic to metals and, my body
Sure.
doesn't like foreign objects. I've actually got two of the gene variances on that. I've got the MTHFR, which a lot of people talk about. And then I have another one that's EPHX1, and that's another detox one.
I've
And that
never
one's
heard
where
of that. So go ahead.
the EPHX1, no, it's actually interesting because it makes me think of the pictures of where I see my clips because I have those pictures and I'll put those in my story too. But it's where our body actually takes any kind of a foreign object or a carcinogen or any kind of toxin and it encapsulates it in fat so that it protects it from our body or protects our body from it. And mine just has a little glitch doing that. And so when you look at where the clips were at, you can tell there's some fat and some tissue around it to protect it, but you can see where some of them are almost kind of poking out.
Mm-hmm.
And so my body just doesn't encapsulate it as much as it should. And so I think that's where I feel the kind of shocks and the little, and and then I think my body was just trying to fight off whatever that was that was causing issues. And then that's where it
Right.
started kind of shutting down the rest of my body is what I feel like. So just getting that information, that's where I felt like I wasn't crazy anymore. Getting the information of knowing I'm allergic to metals and I have detox issues, that changed that
Mm-hmm.
craziness. And that's where the mental and emotional could start moving forward. I got on a custom supplement that's based on my genetics. And then I actually ended up partnering up with that company because I feel like that it changed my life enough that I want to share with other people. So that has been a huge part of my story is just getting in my body what I needed. Because at the time I was taking prescriptions, I was taking supplements, vitamins that I had no idea if I should be taking anymore. I didn't know if my body needed it. I didn't know how much. And really when you
So,
take blood work,
so these are custom made for you
yes.
specifically? Wow.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And down to the microgram it is. And it's all plant-based, vegan, non-GMO, which I'm like, that's what I was already shifting over to was more plant-based, organic, because I know my body can't handle, toxins well. And I didn't want to put anything in my body after this point. I was like, I want all good stuff,
No more
Uh,
things.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've been on that for 3 years and that has shifted, because blood work is just a snapshot of our body at 24, 48 hours, but genetics, what we're born with is what we die with. And it just
Right.
depends if they're expressing, right? Because we all have gene variances that we're predisposed to from our parents. And so that's what the report told me. That's what helped me with my
Mhm.
mental part. And then really getting on the supplements and just balancing out and filling in the gaps was huge
Right.
for my health. It really was.
That's
And
awesome.
I love it because then I took all my supplements, all my vitamins, I got off all my prescriptions, and I just was like, okay, now I know what I need. I'm taking the work out. This is what my body needs. And I
And
could
you're probably
feel the
spending
shift.
a ton less money too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because, yeah, by the time you add up everything you're taking, it's like, yeah. And now I know
Yes.
exactly what I want, what my body needs based on my genes. And that's what has been a big shift for the nutritional element, right? That's really where it started for me. And then I started realizing when I drink more water and better water, I feel better. When I, eat a more healthy diet, like I have more of heart issues, like my family's all got heart issues and detox issues. So I go towards more like a Mediterranean diet and then I feel better. My stomach feels better. I don't eat as much red meat anymore. So I'm just
Mhm.
listening to my body. And that's where it really is like giving our body a voice and listening to it. When
Well,
you're
and
not
our
feeling
bodies are
well,
different. I actually eat a
yep,
ton of red meat because that's what my body wants. It wants meat.
yep.
It wants red meat. It wants white meat. It wants all the meat.
And
But
that's the
it
important part is we all are different. Like we really
right.
are different. When it comes to our blood type and when it comes to our genetics, we all are different, because your blood type can determine if we really should be vegetarian or if we should be eating a bunch of red meat and
Well,
so
we'll
just
definitely be
starting.
getting the link and putting the link for these supplements in our show notes here for sure
Yes,
and in our
absolutely.
on our resource page.
And really the important part of it is just knowing what your body needs because we're guessing all of the time. And if
Mhm.
if we're taking too much vitamin D or if we're not getting certain, plant-based ingredients, our body's not functioning the way it should because we can't with our food and with our soil and just everything that's in what we eat, it just our bodies just can't get the nutrition it needs.
So we're hacking the
So
genetic code is what we're doing.
exactly. And all it is it's actually just supporting it because we can't change our genes. We can't
Sure.
even really stop them if they express on and off, but we can support them to where it helps with symptoms or it helps with, maybe prolonging things, stuff like
Mhm.
that. So but yeah, and then just doing more modalities like breath work. Like I didn't realize I didn't breathe, until I started learning to breathe through my stomach and a lot of people don't and that causes a lot of
Yes.
anxiety for people and doing just meditation and learning to just be with myself and be okay with that. And so now it's been just over 3 years since I got the clips out and I just continue my journey. I continue that health journey. I continue education. I continue learning. I continue sharing. And I'm right there with you. Like, I know that we all have the same goal of like getting this out to people and getting our stories out. All of us are different, yet we came together with the same thing that was going on. And so that's what I love because every story is impactful of different things that's going on and everybody has different ways that they're learning to get through it and get them out or that are still going through it and maybe they're finding ways to get through it until you can get them out because some people have a struggle getting them out, the clips out. So
Sure.
but yeah, so I'm going on 3 years now and I'm doing amazing. I'm up, like you said, hiking mountains and I run all day long. I don't really take naps. I just really my health has changed dramatically. So I wouldn't change a thing.
And
I wouldn't change
no
a thing.
symptoms left. No symptoms.
Every once in a while, like if I eat something, it's the gallbladder, issues. If you eat something too
Yeah.
spicy or too greasy, every once in a while that'll flare up. Sometimes I get the brain fog, but it's like, okay, well, did I sleep good that night? Did I eat sugar that day? I'm very aware now of my body, of everything that
Sure.
I've gone through. So
Mhm.
I don't really connect too much of anything left with either the clips or the gallbladder surgery, except for those couple of things that I eat that I noticed that because it physically makes my gallbladder kind of like where my gallbladder was at. It makes it kind of like flare up a tiny bit or I feel it. So my body's telling me it just doesn't like it. And so I just don't eat it again if I it's flaring up.
So a couple of questions. So doctors will tell you that this, if you bring it up even now, they'll tell you, well, yes, you might have a metal allergy if they acknowledge that, but it's not very common. Do you think it's common? How common do you think it is?
Talking to more and more people, I think it's more common than we even know, and I think we're barely scraping the tip of this. I think we really are the pioneers of this, and I think that's why we all of us strong A personalities are coming together to do this because we needed some strong people to pull this together so that we can get this out there. I think it is way more common. I think a lot of people are getting diagnosed with autoimmune disorders when I think that it could be just a foreign object in their body.
Well, it's interesting that when I did the podcast intro episode and had to explain what a type 4 delayed hypersensitivity reaction is, it's the immediate type 1 reactions that are related generally to food don't usually produce autoimmunity. It's the type 4 delayed sensitivity reactions that actually have autoimmunity as a root cause in the description. And I think that's kind of interesting. Did you go back to the doctor who thought you were a hypochondriac when they were out at the end?
So the one that called me a hypochondriac was the allergy doctor, which I love that you brought this up because 6 months after I got my clips out, I am one where I'm like, I want to know. So I went back and I did the allergy testing again. So I did the back patch test again and I did the blood test again. And long story short, the back patch test came back the same. So externally, I still am, react to nickel and gold, which I'm moving towards doing what's called NAET, which is an energy clearing of allergies. So I'm starting to clear that. So then that way, eventually, maybe I can wear jewelry again, It's already helping actually because I lean up against like metal and I used to just get this burning sensation. And now when I lean up against it, I don't get it. So I already know it's
working.
Changing. Yeah, I love it. So we're continuing to work on that.
Note to self, episode for an NAET episode on the podcast, because that could be a valuable resource for people who can't explant or people that just want a better quality of life with metal allergies.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so the back patch test was still the same, but then I did the blood test. And remember when I did it with the clips in, I was high to nickel and moderate to aluminum. When I took it after 6 months of having the clips out, not one reaction came up. So to me, that was another proof.
That is
that having those
proof of that, and also proof that probably testing ahead of having metals implanted, unless you already have metals and have that exposure, they say it doesn't work very well. So
yeah. So I went back in to go see the allergy doctor to retest. And I wasn't too fond about going back to the same one, but I wanted to have the exact same testing. I wanted to have the exact same, So I went back and the comment he made to me basically was, Lacey, I'm glad that you fought for yourself and I'm glad that you're here. And he says, I just want you to know that when interesting or strange things come up like this, doctors only know how to revert back to what they know. So he didn't apologize, but I kind of took that as his apology of, I'm glad you fought for yourself, but I just had to go with what I knew type thing. And I was like, okay, and then he was great after that.
Did he believe you in the end?
Yeah, he did. But here's where I chickened out, and it will come one day, but I have not gone back to my surgeon, my original surgeon. I have not gone back to him. However, I did send an email to their office. I want to say it was about 4 weeks out after I got out of surgery because of how much had changed in that 4 weeks. And I sent an email to both. I said, please send it to both the doctors. Because my thing is letting them know that it is possible and that it happens and what happened with me so that they can know moving forward with other patients. And I just shared my experience with them. And I just asked them to please don't exclude this of being an issue. And please, listen to your patients and please do this like I just kind of told them at that point what I knew and just told them where I was at 4 weeks, how great I was feeling, all, how the symptoms had started going away or were already away. Didn't get a reply back, but that's okay. Mentally and emotionally, I just kind of moved forward from it. But I know one day it's going to come. And whether that's when a bunch of us go around to doctors and talk to them or, I feel like I kind of need support behind me because the emotion would come out too much with myself. I would love to have somebody that's been through it. Yeah. Like come and sit down and go, look, here's our story.
Yeah. That's when you give them a flash drive with the podcast episode. Say, here's my podcast episode. You might like this podcast.
Exactly. And that's what I love now is knowing so Dr. Linus, he actually just did another girl here in St. George, probably 5 or 6 months ago. And I think she was number 13. And then I think he's done a couple more since her. So, in 3 years, he's, taken 15, 16 people's clips out. And like I said, everyone's had their own experience, but most people feel a relief pretty quick afterwards. And he actually had mentioned to the girl here in St. George that he does try and test for metal testing now before if he can, if it's not an emergency situation, he'll try and do the metal testing to see if people have reactions. And
Nice. And I
that's one
remember,
step forward.
yes, for sure. And I remember I was one of those people. I don't know if you remember, but I called you not very long after my surgery and I didn't have a miraculous recovery. I didn't even notice. And I don't know if you even knew how it turned out, but I didn't notice any benefit for 6 months. And at 6 months, my hair came back soft and curly and it would hold a perm again. I could go outside and on a high pollen day, if it was super, super polleny outside, and it would be 10% more chronic pain instead of 85% more chronic pain. And it was huge, even in spite of the fact that I have all this other metal still in my body. Taking those very small 3 clips out made a huge difference for me,
Yeah.
as did
Yeah.
the low nickel diet. And, haven't been able to get to the supplements yet because my stomach's a bit wonky, but that's on the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I wonder if that with yours, if that's my thought, is just because you have other metals in you, because a lot of people
right.
but even there's one just the other couple weeks ago that got hers out, that she has other metals, and right away she was, so again, we're all different. And that's the
Yes.
beautiful part of it, is we all are different. And there's some people that have had clips in for 10, 12 years. And then there's some of us that I barely had them in for a year. So it depends on how much trauma has already happened to your body, and it's going to take time to recover. And I think that's a lot of people question. A lot of people ask that question too, like, how am I going to feel after? And I really just tell them, it just depends. Everybody's different. So you just have to be positive, and you just have to give yourself grace and give your body grace, that it does need that time to heal, right? Because it's been through a lot of trauma. And then
Right.
I just encourage everybody to really change their lifestyle. Like, they've gotten their life back. They're either somewhat feeling better or feeling better. Like, look at your lifestyle and really decide if it's worth it to you to stop, eating cereal at 10 o'clock at night before you go to bed. Your body needs to stop digesting at night. It needs to repair at night. So stop eating right before you go to bed. Go on a walk, like, drink better water. It really is all those elements. Like, our community now has created a group called the 7 Elements of Wellness, because we realize how important the epigenetics, which is our lifestyle, is more important than even a genetic weakness. So we really are just teaching people how to do just little steps every day to just help your lifestyle. And then you just keep growing and you keep learning and you just keep taking the steps, because
Right.
and it's everyone's going to choose their own way of how they want to continue living, but I'm here to
So
support people however I can.
So we're so different. You're so different now compared to how you were prior to this experience. If you had to go back and live it again, would you, because of who you've become? Or do you wish do you wish none of it had happened?
No, I would do every bit of it again. I would do it all again for sure. Because I feel like I was kind of in just that robot mode of just being a mom and working and doing the things. I wasn't living. And this really made me shift my brain and shift my energy to, and maybe it is just because I feel like I got a second chance. I don't know. But I just am like, I'm not going to waste this now. I'm 43 now, and I'm like, I've got a lot of life to live. So, and I feel great. And I haven't felt this great ever since I was 17 years old. So I'm like, it's time to just live. But my thing is I feel like that the answer was prayer. The prayer was answered to be able to help other people. I needed to have enough energy and enough spirit and enough everything to be able to move forward and do this with you guys. So I feel like that I just got the answers of just, changing my lifestyle, getting healthier, doing all the things so I can move forward and help more people. And you know what? There's one part I just thought about, I didn't touch on, was the holistic doctor that I ended up finding. I think that's really important because we do get a different reaction from these more holistic doctors. And I know some people
Mhm.
think it's woo woo. I know some people think it's weird, these holistic things. But we just look at it as it's more just a different way of looking at our health and our bodies. And he's still very much, if you need prescription or you need a surgery, it's still on the books. But he would rather try and do the holistic way first. And I remember he made me feel like I wasn't crazy because he sat down and listened to my whole story. He didn't just, I wasn't just a number, right? I wasn't in there 10 minutes and out and, they look at you like you're crazy and don't like, if you get emotional, they freeze up. He sat and just listened and looked at me and got emotional with me and let me just cry. And I didn't feel judged in any way. I didn't feel like he was going to try and turn me away at anything. And then I remember him putting up on the board, and this is before I knew anything about genetics or anything about lifestyle stuff. And he just started listing stuff, and he just, anywhere from reading a book to help me sleep better to doing a genetics test. When he wrote that, I was like, what's a genetics test? I didn't know anything about genetics tests, And so he just kind of listed all, because he knew that lifestyle's a big part of it, right? He wanted to help me even when I was sick. So he was doing that. And the very last thing he put on the bottom was get clips removed. And he was the first professional that, said he believed that they needed to be removed. Yep. And that was so good for me.
Huge.
And so he was just my advocate through the end. And then I've continued, seeing him, and now he's my doctor. And he has people, he has one girl that he had, that Linus took the clips out. He had actually introduced me to her because he's like, her story sounds just like yours. Like, you've got to talk to her. And so he, I have a doctor passing patients on to me. You know what I mean? So, but I just really respect the way that they open their mind and know that it's not just about putting someone on a prescription or just sending them right to a procedure,
Awesome. Well, Lacey, thank you so much. We're going to need to wrap up, but thank you so much for coming on today. I see you, and the listeners will see you, and your heart is just so evident for this work and your passion in helping and loving people, even through something as difficult as this. Guys, we're going to put a lot of images and links in the show notes for today's episode. So tune in there. We'll have a list of resources, as always, at heavilymeddled.com. And thank you all for being here and helping us be part of the movement that tells the medical industry we're not going to take it anymore.
We're here. Thanks, Sherry.
Thanks, Lacey. Thank you for tuning in today. Please don't forget to follow me on social media and to like, share, and subscribe. My primary mission is reaching out to others who may be suffering from hypersensitivity reactions to metal implants and pointing them to resources that can assist with hope, help, and healing. If you know someone that suffers from a chronic illness, you might ask if they have any implanted metal hardware and if they've ever had a reaction to jewelry or metals of any kind. Might not even be on their radar. Visit us at heavilymeddled.com, where you can find images and documentation relating to our show today, as well as a number of valuable resources and links to assist you on your own personal healing journey. Until next time, keep on rocking.